We know life can be messy, and that's why you need a plan. Here at the Lifestyle Group, we want to meet you where you are in life and help you create the best home remodeling plan for your lifestyle. To us, plan is more than just a word. It's an acronym we live by for our clients. To always be prepared, to lead you through the process, to adapt to what you need, and to make sure there are no surprises. Each month on the Do You P.L.A.N podcast, we'll look into home remodeling projects that have inspired us, taught us, or can teach you for your future home remodel.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. We don't know each other very well, but we do know each other. I always like to talk about that a little bit for the audience. So this is a new experience for me too, because number one, we have video now. Mm-hmm. We're going big time. I said I'm channeling my inner mini Joe Rogan. We need like bourbon or beer or something here too.
I would be okay with some bourbon.
Yeah,
it's a little early today, but
it is early. But we do know each other. Just more for recent background for anybody that might be watching or listening. I've kind of met you through the Builders Association, through the board of directors,
yep.
And mostly just being in the same room with each other for a little while. Mm-hmm. And then I had a need for a client, and I called you. Then I had a personal need, mm-hmm. and you bailed me out because my TV literally had no sound, and I couldn't diagnose it because I'm not smart enough. And you saved me with that little $50 part, so I appreciate that very much. But so the concept of what I'm doing with the podcast is I'm kind of taking it a little bit different direction this coming year. In the past year, what I tried to do was really talk from a remodeling perspective more so. I've done interaction with others, but I talked about how to navigate a remodeling process, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm still capturing some of that with you. But one of the things that interests me in doing this podcast is for me to get something out of it too, and for me to learn. And one of the ways I like to do that is talking to other business owners about dynamics in your business that affect our mutual customers, and then also just dynamics in our business from running a business. So we're going to hit a little bit on all of those things, low-key conversation, and just talk through some things. So do me a favor and just give me a little bit of your background. Like, did you grow up around here? How did you get into this world?
Sure. So,
and maybe we should start by talking about the world you're actually in. So start by talking about your business for a moment, and then let's talk about background.
Okay. So I'm Ryan Geltz, owner of Pro Security and Automation. We do pretty much any type of low voltage infrastructure, security, AV, sound that goes into a home or commercial project. I did not grow up around here. I moved here probably 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a small town in Illinois called Effingham. It's just straight down 70, about an hour past Terre Haute.
The Big Cross.
The Big Cross, yeah. People know us for that.
Other significance is that my daughter is dating a young man from Effingham.
So
see? Now we know.
It's a great place then.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
I grew up there. I have a background. I got my college degrees in math and biomedical engineering. And probably 15 years ago, when I was getting that first degree, I went on a summer internship and started selling security systems door to door. So that was where I just jumped into it. Mm-hmm. Way different now. We don't go door to door or anything like that. We work with builders.
Sure.
But so that kind of got my feet wet in the whole home technology area. And so since then, I kind of went in and out, and then eventually started this company about 7 years ago. And then just really wanted to focus on kind of the new construction and a lot of working with builders, which is what brought me to the association and how we ended up meeting.
Was there a crossover for you from the security side to the home automation side early on?
Yeah.
Or was it more recent as you evolved over the years?
It really continues to evolve. So when I got into it, security was, as it had been, mostly all hardwired. Mm-hmm. And once we started making that jump into wireless, not just like locally, but then like cellular communication, it opened up the door to a lot of other facets. And as home automation got cheaper, they kind of started bridging that gap together. And so that's where I started adapting all the new home tech and AV and just everything else and adding it to what we did.
Is it a constant learning process for you?
100%. Yeah.
Like I can't imagine going through a week or a month and not picking up something new that's out there.
Yeah. And that's probably one of the biggest complaints from customers that do stuff like this on their own is they put it in, they want it to work. 6 months later, something changes. Then they got to go figure it out again. And then they got to do it again. And then there's something new a year later. And so you're constantly just like reintegrating things. And so we keep up with all of that and use the products and the services and stuff that we know work well together so that it keeps everything simple.
I want to delve into that. But before we do, I'm just curious, did you ever at any point going from a direct to homeowner door-to-door approach, did you evolve and migrate through a business where you worked with retail to make the decision that you wanted to work with builders? Or did you just find that working with builders gave you a cleaner pipeline to working with clients?
So the door-to-door is the ultimate cold call.
Sure. Yeah.
So you just bang on a lot of doors and hope people listen and you find one person that might. I also worked in the liquor industry, which was business to business. Mm-hmm. And so you had accounts, you checked on them every week, and you took orders. Taking orders is a little bit easier than going out and finding that new customer all the time. So to me, once I learned that, builders continue to use this over and over, well, then it just made a lot of sense to invest a lot of time and effort into meeting them and trying to really meet their needs and work with the building process.
So what's your mix of products? If you said, hey, here's a menu of the types of things we do, let's talk through that first. The types of things that you're doing day to day, just mainstream, kind of in your wheelhouse.
Sure.
You're focusing on what initially?
So we call it, smart home or smart devices. And so that starts with their security, automation, surveillance, AV, network, and then like house sound or surround sound. That's kind of the 6 categories that I break it up into.
Where do you see people putting their money first? Like, do they start with the security piece and then maybe they add a little bit of technology? Like, where do you see the dollars spent?
It's very unique to the person. Mm-hmm. So some people are audiophiles and really love audio and home theater and stuff like that. Some people are very secure and, they want to make sure all their family and their goods and things are taken care of. And then other people are just techie and they want to be able to control everything from their phone. So you get a mix of everything, but it all kind of falls back to that home network now. And so that's where I always try to start people with is if you're going to do nothing, just make sure that you have a solid network, because even the devices that I'm not going to supply for you, your phone, your iPad, your TV, some of those things, that's going to fall back on that infrastructure.
So for the homeowner and the novice that you're having the first conversation, let's say I'm that homeowner and I don't know where to start. How are you describing for that person what that infrastructure looks like to say, hey, what I really think you should start with this foundation is setting up a home network. Mm-hmm. What does that consist of for you?
Pre-wire. Okay. So if you're building a house or you're doing a remodel and you have the opportunity to run additional cables and wires different places, get the pre-wire done, because you can always add that stuff later, whether it's additional access points because you need better Wi-Fi on one area of your house, mm-hmm. or if you decide, hey, I want to put those speakers in, 2 years from now so that I have audio in the kitchen. But that side of it is kind of the cheap, very labor intensive that you can do during those stages. Whereas when it comes down later on, you really limit yourself to just like something wireless, like a small Echo or, something like that.
So then next level, somebody gets the pre-wire done and they're like, okay, I want to do the basic networking piece, mm-hmm. where I'm going to have that. What's the next piece? What's the next level you're taking it to then?
One thing that gets sometimes confused with internet and Wi-Fi, they're actually kind of 2 different things and the same. So you get internet from your provider and they deliver, 100 megabytes to your modem. That's what they kind of supply. They don't disperse it throughout your house. So then they give you a router, which is just one single antenna. That might work well for a small house. If you have a larger house over, say, 2,000 square feet, you might need more than one of those. Or if it's put in, say, a bedroom closet and you're on the other side of the house, you no longer have signal strength to get that there. You're still getting your full bandwidth to the house, but you don't have the Wi-Fi strength to actually connect to it. So that's where, if we've ran wires throughout the house, we can add another access point on the basement or the upstairs or on the other side of the house.
And it'll talk to the router?
Yep.
Okay.
And so it talks right back to it. Some people have tried to use repeaters, which that's kind of a Band-Aid on it. And if you use too many repeaters, they can actually start to cause more noise. All the signals just start getting, thrown around. So if you have that pre-wire, you can quickly do that. The other thing with the pre-wire is your TVs, computers, gaming systems use the most bandwidth. If you're streaming Netflix and Hulu and all these things, that's going to bog down the Wi-Fi. So if we can run wires to those, get those high bandwidth devices kind of on that hardwired connection, now your Wi-Fi is even cleaner. You got less on it. And then your phone, your iPad, these devices that have to be wireless are clean.
They'll function.
Yeah. Function much better.
They'll be faster.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. Once you get into that piece and you've laid all of that foundation, are you seeing people go to sound more often than video? When I say video, I'm thinking home theater. Okay. Like where do people navigate next? I know you say it's in the eye of the beholder or the user, but like what do you see most commonly? The reason I'm asking, part of this conversation in my mind is to position if you threw this conversation on your website and we were to try to lay the groundwork for somebody to think about these things, and we were almost doing a 30-minute commercial / conversation about how people think about it, I would want to know, like, what do you see most often for the person that doesn't know? And maybe it's an element of cost. Like, so for instance, it might be a lot more affordable to get speakers put in next than to go ahead and put a projection TV system in, right?
Yep.
So
definitely budget plays a role in that. For me personally, I recommend you secure your house before you kind of take those luxury or higher end type of ads. So a basic security system, get that in there, because if you go put a $20,000 home theater system in, well, then someone breaks in and steals it. What priorities do you have as a homeowner? Is it securing your house, or is it, having a theater in the house?
Right. What are you seeing with cameras, video cameras, doorbell cameras? Like, what are you recommending to people when it comes to that? Yeah.
So doorbell cameras, when they came out, were huge, and they're still huge. And probably every doorbell going in now is going to have a video on it. For us, they almost act more as a piece of automation instead of surveillance in my mind, because it is 3 feet off the ground. Most of them are wireless, like Wi-Fi type of things that I've heard stories of people stealing them off doorsteps. How is it a surveillance camera if it gets stolen?
Right.
So for me, surveillance is more up on the eaves of your house, and you're going to have a much higher resolution than that doorbell camera. So it has it's a wide range of view, but you're not going to see more than probably 10 feet of very good resolution off the front of it. You might be able to say, hey, there's that red car, but there's not really a whole lot of high resolution footage that you're going to get farther than that. Right. So for the perimeter of the house, 4 megapixel to 4K cameras can pick up a good resolution picture of a person 30 to 50 feet away. You're also going to have better night vision with it. We always hardwire those as well. So that brings in that kind of Wi-Fi versus hardwire. If you put in a bunch of Wi-Fi cameras around your house, it's going to start bogging down your Wi-Fi as well, because it's all streaming. Yep. The other problem with that is they stream that video back to the cloud and store it there. Well, what if your internet goes out? Or if I'm a smart thief and cut the internet to a person's house? Now you've lost basically any of that footage. So a more secure surveillance system would be hardwired back and have local storage.
So you've just got to get access to be able to find the best place to put cameras. First of all, for somebody, it's easy on a new construction, right? It's a little bit more difficult on a retrofit.
It's a little bit more difficult, but we still do it a lot with very, very minimum damage or anything to the house when we do it, because 90% of the cameras are going to come off like your soffits, and if you got an open attic above it, run the wires through there,
fish it,
and yeah.
And is most of that technology today tied to an app where somebody can jump on and look at their cameras?
I don't think I've seen a camera system that you can't access from your phone in like 3 years. The newest thing that's kind of coming with it is, instead of using your surveillance to look back at something happening, now there's AI and analytics so that you can get notified if a person comes into the view of that camera and crosses a line on your driveway. So where it used to just be motion, which would go off 100 times a day, or when it snows like today, if you have those video analytics in there, it goes back to a server that says, hey, that's a person. And then you get a notification on your phone. So now you have proactive surveillance on it. So
it's unreal.
Yeah.
So that's actually changed the technology in a way that makes it much more useful, because every time your Ring doorbell would go off, you almost got numb to it, right? You wouldn't even use it.
Yep.
Next level of technology to me in really the home automation experience would seem to be like setting scenes. And what technology do you have to have in place to be able to literally walk in the door and say, Alexa, turn on Good Evening, right? Or hit a button on your phone. What all has to be in place for you to be able to walk in and all of a sudden your lights go to a certain place, music comes on, blinds move to a certain level, or those types of things that we see with true smart homes. And in setting those scenes with the 3 or 4 things I just mentioned, what am I completely missing that other people are tying into that?
Yeah, I think so. That kind of brings up a kind of a fine line distinction where we talk about smart devices and then like a smart home.
Okay.
So all the things you listed are smart devices. And it does, to me, it becomes a smart home when you start connecting those dots, like you said.
Okay.
So you can have scenes, which a scene is usually somehow it's triggered normally on your phone or by Alexa. You would, give some sort of trigger, and then it runs a list of commands. Turn the light on, open the shades, turn my music on, set the thermostat to 70. So that's one kind of form of automation. Okay. The next would be schedules. So lights come on at dusk, turn on at dawn, HVAC turns on and off different times of the day, schedules. Then you have those triggers, which may not be triggered by a scene, but we have something with like thermostats where if a smoke alarm goes off, it shuts off the HVAC system. So that's like a safety trigger, and to be able to do it all, number one, you just have to have that sort of smart compatible device, but then you have to be able to know how to integrate it. And that's one of the biggest things that we do, because there are lots of ways to do it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that like you have to call me to do it, because there's lots of DIY ways of doing it. Some are very cumbersome. Some you have to go from cloud to cloud to cloud to cloud to kind of connect the dots. And some other items, like for a system like we might bring it all into one app, a lot easier to use. So
do you have a preferred provider or service that you use today, or do you use multiple platforms for that? Where do you migrate?
Yeah, we migrate to alarm.com with the security kind of first position. Okay. But if you're looking more AV, there's RTI Control4. There's lots of different ones.
So when it comes to that, you'll use different platforms based on need.
Yeah.
But the baseline, like I'm familiar with alarm.com, at least through my business security for sure.
Yeah.
Where we can jump on and I can navigate everything from that website.
Yep. And there is as things get more complex, then there's more maintenance and stuff that goes with it. So when we try to keep it simple, you can take some to very, very customized levels with those scenes, with those triggers and things like that, where it's, based on sunlight or based on user command. And it could be anything from your toilet flushing to a fridge opening. I mean, you could scale it to whatever level you want. Most of our customers want something that's more simple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you guys actually doing anything with, I'll say, water prevention and some of those? And can you talk a little bit about what that looks like in your world?
Yeah. And I think that is one of the things that needs to be recognized a little more, because with homeowners insurance, you can get discounts for having a security system. You can get discounts for having fire like monitored. So like your smoke detectors. Flood is the next, biggest thing that an insurer has to insure. Mm-hmm. So I think you'll see a lot more flood sensors and water valves that are automated, where you have a flood by your sump pump or under a faucet, and it turns that valve off automatically. And then you get an alert on your phone, you can check it, because even if you don't have the valve and you just get notified, the real damage from a flood is not the water. It's sitting there and soaking in for a long time.
Right.
You go on vacation and you don't find it for a week.
Yeah. No, it is interesting. I know I went to the home technology show out in Seattle at the end of last year. There was a lot of conversation around those puck devices, and even the devices that will measure flow when the water enters the house, where you put that on, and if that water flow changes or that pressure changes, you're getting notifications to your phone letting you know you have a problem.
Yep.
So very interesting stuff. What's the craziest thing you've seen people do or seen somebody do recently?
There's some AV stuff with theaters and just the size of TVs and video walls dropping from ceilings and stuff like that.
That's kind of where my head is going. I'm really curious about the video wall. So my idea of an intense setup is that I've got 2 TVs in my basement for my football on Sundays, where I can have Red Zone on one and whatever game I'm watching on the other. And I think of that as high tech, which is absolutely not high tech at all. But it works for me. So, but I'm curious about, like, are you seeing paneled walls? Are you seeing huge projection systems that people,
right now in the home side of it, it's pretty expensive. So you'll see that in commercial applications.
Okay.
Churches will spend a lot of money on video walls and projection screens and stuff like that. Yeah. On the residential side, not as often, I would say.
So like the application that we worked together on recently, or kind of in the process of, but you did the pre-wire, and essentially the fundamental decision was, do I put a massive TV up, or do I do the projection system that mounts to the ceiling and visualizes on the screen on the wall, right? That's really the fundamental decision for the most part. Yeah. On the residential side.
And it used to be, you would very much go to a projector because TVs only went up to 50, 60 inches. Well, now your projector goes down to about 90 or 100 inches, and there's TVs going up to 85, 90 inches. So that gap is pretty much bridged.
How are you navigating clients through that decision-making process then? If somebody is not sure which direction to go, how do you guide them as to what decision to make?
Well, it depends on just what type of quality they're wanting to go for, and the budget.
Because like somebody that wants to stay more modest is better served making which decision? The TV decision? Or okay. And mostly because you have a relatively contained cost of how much it costs to purchase a TV, and relatively few decisions, I would imagine, of what technology falls within those TVs, right?
Right, yeah.
And once you get into the projection world and you take that step, what things are you considering now that are driving cost? Let's just say you're in front of the client that has a fairly sizable budget, and they're just trying to figure out, how do I want to spend my money and what's important to me? What are the decisions that they're making when they make that choice? How are you guiding them through which projection and what to decide?
So you can get either 1080 or 4K projectors. Okay. And then they still have some bulb. Most are moving to like laser projection. So there is a little bit of more maintenance on that bulb side of having to replace it. Lasers will last I don't know, 10 to 20,000 hours. So a little bit longer lifespan on something like that.
Okay.
So you got to take that into effect, and then the actual screen. So you could paint the wall with a reflective screen, or you could pay thousands of dollars for a sleek white reflective professional screen. So
how big do those screens get now?
You can get them any size, really.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, as big as you want to go, there's someone that will make it that big.
And the quality of picture is insane when you spend the money up for the projection
So and that's the thing is, as it gets bigger, you have to project light farther, and so the projector then becomes more expensive, and that just kind of keeps going up. So that's where you start getting into the commercial applications. Giant wall, those are very, very expensive projectors. So
most of the time in a residential application, a large projection system is going to give you how big of a screen related to an 85-inch television screen. How big do you normally see them going?
So if you're going to do a projection, you could do it down to about 100 would be the minimum, but that's where just get the 85 probably. But yeah, if you have the room for like 120 up to, we've done 180, 190 inch.
Okay.
Yeah. And at that point, it just depends on the size of your wall.
Okay.
You could have it take up the entire wall. Looks a little weird,
Mm-hmm.
But if we're going to throw in some speakers on both sides, okay, well, you're going to need to pull it in a couple feet on both sides. So at that point, it comes down to, what's the size limitation of the space that you're trying to do it for?
Right.
If you're renovating a house or building a new one and you have a dedicated theater room, then okay, you could build it out to what you want. A lot of homeowners, this is more of an afterthought. And then they go, oh, you know what? That projector would be great for that basement entertainment area. Can we put it on that wall? And you start looking at it and you're like, okay, well, it's only... you don't really get to about this big
mm-hmm.
before you're going to really start taking up the whole wall, and it's going to look a little enormous on it.
How do you factor in window locations in theater room setups?
Ideally, you don't want any.
Right. So ideally you're covering them or they're not there at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of the common application that I see, which is somebody decides 7 years after they've been in the house, they're going to finish a basement. And by the way, we want a projection or we want a theater set up down there.
Mm-hmm.
And just so happens there's a window up there and a window up there flanking it. At that point, are you saying, hey, this is not the place to put this anymore? Or this is how we navigate it? Like, talk about what windows do to theater setups. Obviously, they detract from it. But how can you mitigate their locations?
I mean, blackout blinds is obviously, you cover the light, but you're going to see less contrast on a projection screen than you would on a television screen.
Okay.
So if it is there's a lot of ambient light in there, then the projection is going to look more washed out.
Okay.
When the light is coming from the TV, it can emit a lot brighter in a contained spot.
So you get more pop and it's just really sharp and crisp.
So when it's light in the room, just ambient, if it was very, very bright, then a TV is going to be a better solution.
Okay, that's actually literally where I was going to go next with it. Is at that point you're looking television versus projection.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of projectors in first floor living rooms where there's all ambient light, windows around it. Right. It's just going to be washed out. You're not going to be able to see it very well.
Okay, so now talk about sound in that space. I'm curious. Like, I've always understood that you want the sound
mm-hmm.
coming from behind you. So ideally you've got a wall or something that brings it back to you. And then you also have sound function from the front side, but just talk in general about how you are normally setting up sound in that kind of a space.
Sure. So you're going to typically have a basic 5.1, which when I say 5.1, that's your front left, center, front right, and then like 2 in the rear or surround. I say rear or surround because a 5.1, you can change kind of those locations based on what the layout of the house is, okay. And what you're projecting through it. So in some homes I've seen, they just do it all in the ceiling. We like to keep the fronts at least on the wall as they're more forward facing instead of above. Your rears, there's very specific guidelines for meeting THX or theater quality, Dolby surround sound, and different protocols. If you're designing the theater from start, then yeah, you can go in and try to very specifically make your angles and get everything on the very correct walls. A lot of people are just throwing it in a basement entertainment area. Well, like you said, you need a rear wall. Well, you don't have one on one side. All right, well, let's throw the rears on the ceiling. They're still directional, so you can turn the cones and put them where you want. So there's ways of still accomplishing that theater sound, even if it wasn't necessarily, built to spec exactly theater quality.
Gotcha. Talk about the last piece of it, at least that comes to my mind, and that is just the soundproofing in general in the walls. What do you recommend for somebody that really cares about sound? And then for your everyday homeowner, what's good enough? Like, what are the levels, I guess, that you would talk about for a client expectation for sound?
Yeah.
Mostly as it relates to wall insulation and how you set those walls up. If you're creating a theater room and you're trying to soundproof that room or give the best sound that you can create in that space, there's probably one level of finish, right? Then there's another level that says, hey, just get some insulation in those walls to keep some of the background noise out. Do you have recommendations for people in terms of how they would insulate those walls for sound?
Yeah, so there's lots of just sound dampening decor, I guess would be that, that you can put up there, where it's basically just soft fabric, like you see them in gyms and stuff to help with echoes.
And that absorbs.
And that'll absorb in a theater room the echoes, and just like in a real theater, they have lots of that sound dampening material in there.
Yeah.
If you're talking more about
space, structural.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were talking about sound getting outside of the theater room.
Yes, that too.
So that people could, I'm assuming, do like multiple layers of drywall, or there are sound dampening types of building material that you put in there. Even just insulation would cause some.
Right.
The other thing is actually behind the speakers, you can have built-in back boxes, so that it contains the sound behind the speaker as well. It not only helps project it forward, but it also helps from it leaking behind, up through the bay and into other areas that way too.
Is that something that you guys spend a lot of time focusing on, or not necessarily? It's not that big a deal.
If a client specifically requested it, most of ceiling speakers, they're not like your rears and your Atmos type speakers. They're not super loud, and there's not a lot of bass going through that speaker. Your front speakers, they're gonna pop, and you might want to have some sound dampening if the layout of your theater, if that wall happened to be up against someone's bedroom,
right,
that would definitely probably be something to consider.
In my prior home, I had the speaker set up. I had the subwoofer, and the subwoofer was promptly disconnected because the house was shaking with the bass, and so that was eliminated from my sound system.
Aww.
Because my wife was trying to sleep, and everything was just kind of thumping, even just normal TV, right?
Yeah.
And just anything you watch.
Yeah.
It's amazing how you can literally feel that sound. It's ridiculous. So.
Oh yeah. And that's the other thing with theaters is it's not all about how loud it is too. You know, it's the whole feeling of it, the directional sound and stuff like that. Some people, the first thing they do is they're going to go crank it up and be like, oh yeah, I can feel that, which that's great. But it's more about the whole quality.
Yeah. What have I not asked you about that you see day to day in your business that you're incorporating for clients or being asked about?
I mean, that's
those most
things. That was the most, pretty much everything that we talked about.
Your your interaction with your builders, are you essentially coming in at a point in the process and having a conversation about all the options available? Or do you find that some builders are literally just kind of late? I always say they already think like you think, so they're proactively offering your services to their client without you even having to get engaged in some of those conversations with the client.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's what we want to help push the industry towards, is seeing this as just another trade like mechanicals and electrical, that this needs to be brought up like during those stages. There should be a budget. You should talk about what's going in there and what you're going to use and everything else. Sometimes actually there's still people that will say some of this stuff, just talk to them after the fact because, you can do it wirelessly. Yes, you can do some of these things wirelessly, but is it going to be the best way of doing it? And are you just clogging down that wireless network now? So we always want to make sure those conversations come up early enough so that they can be discussed, they can be budgeted for. So for us, we have what's called a budget planner on our website so that you could just go in there, answer some questions, and then get a range of this is about how much this will cost. Okay. From what I've seen, that's all a builder really is concerned about mostly, is the budget, we can cross the T's and dot the I's later, but we just need to know how much it's going to cost.
Yep. And because it's just another element of an entire house to them, I would imagine that while they like the idea of incorporating technology, it's just another element to them of managing through the process, right? So have you seen the builders evolve in a way that has been helpful to you? Or is it, and I can say this being a contractor myself, is it just a constant struggle because they're so busy that you're still trying to teach us? I always say you're trying to teach us how to most effectively incorporate you into the process.
Yeah, I think it depends on the builder, obviously, and their technical level. So if it's someone who uses it in their house and has it and likes it, they'll talk about it a lot, and they're more willing to sell it and actually talk about it. Not because they're trying to upsell it, but
it's because they see value in it.
And they understand it themselves. They don't want to talk about something they're not familiar with. Yep. So we have some other builders who want to incorporate it, but they know I'm not the most tech savvy person, and they don't feel comfortable having that conversation with the client. So okay, great. You can get a budget, so you can at least do that. And then once you've kind of decided on that, bring them over to us, and then we can have that, in-depth conversation about it. That's not to say as well that the customer has that same two sides of level of technical savviness, because there are some that will say, I don't want any of it because I don't understand it, and, goes on. But when we show them how easy it is and that we basically get it all set up so that it'll work for them, they're a lot more prone to start using it.
That touches on the new construction side. But now if I put my remodeler hat on and you're having a conversation with me about effectively presenting these options for my clients in an existing home, how are you positioning me to bring you into the conversation, knowing it's going to be a little bit harder to, like, if I'm doing, let's just say I'm doing what I call the kitchen with scope creep. Okay? We're doing a kitchen. By the way, at the same time, we're going to carry flooring through the main level. We might take a wall out, might paint the main level. So we're doing these things, and there's probably an application for smart lighting controls or things that can be added and integrated wirelessly. How should I be positioning that conversation to my clients from what you see? Because quite honestly, I don't today. Am I missing something? Am I missing an opportunity for how you see people using their homes in that way? I mean, I'm probably not going to try to sell somebody a new television system if I'm doing a kitchen, but should I be having conversations about lighting controls, or what should I be talking about?
So that does actually bring up something with lighting that we hadn't really talked about, was that with lighting now, you can just swap out the light switch. So depending upon how in-depth that remodel is going to go, I don't know if you're changing electrical completely, or if it's even feasible with how it's all ran. Because traditional lighting, you have switches that are literally opening and closing and letting the power run through. With automated lighting, though, we basically close that circuit on a single switch. And then the other, what you would call a 3-way or 4-way switch, really just becomes a remote. So one thing that's kind of nice is we've gone into homes where they have lighting existing, they want it automated, or they say, I actually want that light over there. I need a light switch for it over there. From a standard electrical standpoint, it'd be kind of hard to run that wire, put it in series and everything else.
Yep.
Well, instead of having to do that, you just pop over a different remote, and then they can have control on the other bank of light switches. So if you're doing a remodel, and if it makes sense, then yeah, I would definitely talk about lighting. The other thing would just be usability of it. If it's a back deck or something that, is an entrance where someone's coming home, that, maybe you want that light to come on at night. Any sort of automation with that lighting can be added value to the homeowner and how they're going to use that space.
And now, because of the ability to do that wirelessly, it's really not that big a deal to add those things after the fact and incorporate it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, very interesting to know. So let's make a shift and take the conversation to just business level, our business. So you're a business owner, I'm a business owner, and one of the things that I like to have conversations about are just how you approach business in general. But in order to do that, tell me a little bit about your staffing model and your mix of maybe trade partners that you use, and how many people are on staff, and what's your setup like?
Sure. So I kind of have it modeled very similar to like an electrical company. We have project manager, we have technicians, we have back office, service department, sales. So we're meeting with clients, creating proposals, creating layouts. That stuff gets approved by the builder and the client. Then sit down, talk to the project manager about it, might do a site walk, take some pictures, and make sure everything is where it needs to be. Then go out. A lot of the jobs there's multiple phases. So we come in to do a pre-wire, then we come back several months later and finish the job out, which is typically like right before the job's going to get finished. So it's a balancing act of getting in there not too early, but not too late either.
And yeah, so you're often on the back end if you're putting equipment in, and at that point you've got to be extremely neat because painting's done, everything is finished, and you're putting on the booties or taking off the shoes and walking across the newly laid floors, and you're the finishing touch. And you're the jewelry, I would say.
So we actually have it kind of broken into 4 phases. Okay. It might sound just like 2, but we have the pre-wire, and then phase 2, 3, and 4 are actually split up so that we can come back and get things in the ceiling and check the security wires and on all that before the final paint and stuff like that's done. So we come check it and get some of that stuff in. If there needs to be drywall repair, it's not that big a deal. And then phase 3, we start getting a lot of the higher end equipment and stuff put in, things that we want to make sure don't get damaged or anything earlier. And then the final phase is actually we have to have network there, which might not even come till after the homeowner moves in. And then once the network gets installed, well, then we got to get everything connected to it and the Wi-Fi set up. And lastly, actually train the customer on what they're using. So even though it's, just like one area, we have 4 different phases that we actually call it.
And have you evolved into that? Like, did you learn painful lessons along the way to say, okay, I've got to get in and get this stuff done before the painter's out of here. So if there's a touch-up, we can do the touch-up, right?
Yeah. Yep. And we continue to evolve and still update these protocols on how things are changing with builders and stuff, because we do kind of put stuff in and then, pray that everything is still there and the way we left it, because not a builder's fault, but a door might have to get replaced and then they don't know that wire got pulled out. And so there's a lot of things that you have to adapt to on a construction site.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So the name of this podcast is the Do You P.L.A.N podcast, and each letter of the word plan has a meaning, and that's one of the things I want to talk to you about, which was just adapting, because that's the A piece of this, and we're kind of delving into the prepare piece, right? Like you've learned lessons over time, and you're going to be as prepared as you can be, but inevitably still can't be prepared enough, it feels like, right? So that's constantly, it's like, okay, we prepare, we work our way through it, then we adapt, then we prepare differently the next time, right? And then we adapt again. And it's just this never ending process.
Yep.
Yeah. Talk about your leadership style. Like, how do you like to interact with your people, and when you're making changes and rolling changes out? I mean, how are you going about that where your people are constantly in some cases, I know my people are rolling their eyes going, going to change something again, or we're going to do this, or now we changed this system or change that. But like, how do you navigate that from a leadership perspective?
Yeah. So having to always adapt doesn't work for all people. I've employed people and I know people that they need to have redundancy. And so being in this field and knowing that even though I did my job and I come back and it's screwed up, you just got to take it and like move on. So we always try to focus on not the problems, but the solutions. So that's how I lead. Yeah, people mess up, and we respect that and we understand that, and we're going to talk about it. But at the end of the day, all right, what did we learn? How are we going to fix it next time? Now let's go to the next job. Yeah,
that's, to me, when I think about no surprises, and it's kind of this cultural thing that's built within us, which is, and everything has like a dual purpose. There's the internal piece of preparing and leading and adapting and dealing with no surprises. And then there's that piece that relates to the client, where we still have to prepare the client, lead them through the process, help them to adapt to changes. But the no surprises thing, to me, just kind of runs through seamlessly through the culture, because I always say good news and bad news, it's all news, right?
Yeah.
So let's just deal with the reality of it. And if I got upset about every mistake or every problem, I joke, but it's true, I'd probably be just in the fetal position, laying in a corner, crying all day, every day, because we have more problems than we have good news on a daily basis, right?
Right.
But just not taking it, internalizing and personalizing every mistake or every challenge, I think it's almost, if you're a business owner, you have to be able to compartmentalize it, right?
Yeah. It's like false expectation. You know they can't go 100% right. So expect that there are going to be things that happen. Not on purpose, but things are going to happen. And there was a TED talk or something I heard one time that a guy talked about surrendering the outcome, where you can do everything, right, and it still goes wrong. And you can be hung up on it for days, months, years, or say it happened and move on. Yeah. And we learn from it, and you just got to, pick it up and make the best of it.
It's interesting. I always say we strive to do the perfect project, even though we'll never see it. And we've had one that's been going just as well could go, knock on wood, just seamless. And we're probably in the last 3 days of it. We're doing the tile shower, and they did the waterproof click and lock floor. And so we're doing the electrovinyl plank flooring. We go to open the boxes yesterday, and the ends are broken, because when FedEx shipped the 3 boxes, we get the one where all the edges are broken on the first box. They open the first box, and I see a message on Slack. We have a problem. We're right at the end of the project. We're right there. We're going to open box 2, and you better go ahead and order another 3 boxes, because this is not going well. Like every box we opened was damaged. So inevitably, even when things are rolling, we're going to run into roadblocks. That was going to lead me to a couple of questions for you. But one, do you have supply chain issues in your world today? And where are you seeing it? Like, what are challenging things to get for you, or things where you're getting them, but maybe you're having to order another one and then another one because it's not coming?
Yeah, since the beginning of 2020, audio video receivers have been 6 to 12 months on back order for things. Yeah. Certain chips and amplifiers just in general have been out. And then security glass break sensors, the microphones that go in those, there's been a couple different times where they've just been out of not just one type, but any type of glass break out there that you can find for months at a time.
So how are you navigating that in your world?
We buy hundreds at a time.
Just hold them. Yeah.
We do now. Yeah. And we've kind of that phase 1, phase 2, we've shifted from, we used to order equipment at phase 2, like getting ready for it. Yeah. Now at the end of phase 1, we order it because we know it could take 3 months to get everything in.
Yeah.
And it's a shift of cash flow a little bit. But in the end, we adapted our process to make up for that. And so now I'm hoping we will work even more efficient because we'll know we have everything. And then when we go out to the job, there should be no excuse for not having every device the first, when we go out there. We have lots of devices and different moving parts that have to go into a house. Sure. So return trips add up.
Yeah. Talk about labor challenges in your world if you have them. Mm-hmm. What are you looking for in employees and how hard are they to find in your world?
I've been extremely fortunate that our employees have gotten referred and it's been pretty much organic on how we've been able to expand. But just like anywhere else, there are labor shortages. And I think I'm hoping that my industry will evolve into a true trade, if you will, of mm-hmm. like an electrical trade. And kids nowadays will be interested in the tech side of stuff. And so I think for the normal, 18, 20-year-old, doing what we do is probably a lot more appealing than being a plumber.
I think it's very interesting. I laugh when you say that because I happen to be home the day that your employees came to swap out that audio piece for me. I was COVID home, but I was home and kind of trying to stay upstairs and away. But I stood at the top of the stairs and they were babies, right? They were just young kids. But it seriously made me think, okay, these kids probably are video game experts that know everything about technology, mm-hmm. love this stuff.
Yep.
And it's a good opportunity for a career.
Yeah.
Like a very good opportunity to go and do some high-tech things and still get the enjoyment that they get out of just what they enjoy doing as they've grown up. Bringing all those worlds together. So yeah, I think you've got an advantage in attracting young talent and smart kids.
And nowadays, when I went through high school, I took an electrical class. I took a small engine repair class in high school.
Yeah.
Now they take robotics and coding and networking, so.
Are you trying to get them from high school then? Are you trying to get them as young as you can get them and train them yourself?
Yeah.
Or are you trying to get them with some experience?
I've had a lot of good experience training my own guys, finding the ones that are interested in it and want to learn. Because like you said, you've got to continuously keep learning the new stuff.
Yeah.
So if it's something where you just want to come in, get trained, and then go about your day and never learn another thing, it's not going to work out.
Right.
And I feel like seasoned veterans, a little bit older, they know what they know, and they're less likely to kind of move in that direction. Mm-hmm. Someone younger, that's what they know.
Right. Yeah. They know it's always changing, whatever it is. Interesting. So you've just had an interest in this forever. Do you enjoy the continued learning, or is it at times a burden? You're like, oh my God, I got to learn something else now. Or, is it something that you enjoy going home at night and reading about this stuff?
I enjoy learning in general. So that's why I went to school multiple times, and I just did like an MBA cert like 9 months ago. And I'll continue to probably go on to get a master's and like different things like that. So to me, that has always just been my personality and what I like to do. So it comes very natural that I just peruse new technology and stuff and just like to see it and like to figure out how it works.
So where are you getting your education? Are you going to shows or classes or doing trainings with manufacturers, or are you just literally out there surfing around looking for the next thing and then learning about it?
All of the above.
Okay.
Some manufacturers you got to pay to, do it, and then you can sell it. So there's that. There's certifications where now I'm making my guys get these because I want them to have it and be able to know how to do it without me being there.
Yeah.
So training is just huge. But the biggest thing is now is just anything on Facebook, YouTube. I've done Code Academy and like things where you can sign up for a $30 course, just go through some videos, and you can learn 90% of the stuff out there, just online.
Just
like,
knowing where to
you
find
don't have to go to college and, Ivy Tech and stuff like that to find this stuff.
Yeah.
It's all out there.
Yeah. The world is very much changing in that way. In our world, it's interesting because we spent a whole generation telling kids they had to go to college. And now when I look for carpenters and tradespeople that are skilled and talented, it's very hard to find them, right? Mm-hmm. And I've got great ones, and I'm very, very happy with them. But I would love to hire 4 more, like to go find 4 more people like what I've got that care. And so it's, but you don't need a college degree for that. And I think we finally come back around to a place where learning is learning. And I mean, a kid can go trade crypto in his basement and make a living these days, right? And not have to go to college and figure that out. Obviously, if you want to be an attorney or a doctor, there's a certain path, but it is very interesting that way.
Well, and there's the work-life balance, and just some people have the desire to, work with their hands or, build something instead of sitting in an office or something like that, which is pretty much what kept me from pursuing that side of engineering. Once I started getting into owning a business and then working with builders, it just became a better lifestyle for me that I enjoyed doing. Mm-hmm. I get to go outside, today it's cold, but a lot of times it's nice. You're outside, you're with fun people, it's laid back, You're
not sitting in a cubicle
exactly.
with your head down.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. I think that balance, even within a company, my guys would go nuts, I think, sitting behind a desk, answering questions, doing estimates, whatever it might be all day. They would just like to go out and build stuff and go home and not have to worry about thinking about those things all the time. But inevitably, it's funny because they still go home and think about it all the time anyway. Just like your guys are learning new technologies, my guys are thinking about how they're going to accomplish that tile project the next day to make it work in that corner where those 2 areas come together. Those details still consume you. I think that's just a function of getting people that care and wanting to do that. So what you kind of led into it just a little bit with work-life balance, but as we wrap up, I'm curious, like, what does success look like for you when both maybe from a company perspective, personally, I know you had a new baby recently as well, like, when you're thinking about what success means to you, what does that look like? And I'm curious how that has evolved over time.
For me, success is really about, time and how I get to prioritize my time. And throughout my life, it will change. When I was younger, I took a lot of pride in working 70, 80 hours a week. Now, I look at how much time I put in sometimes and I'm like, I need to cut that back because I need to spend time with my family. So me being able to have complete control over that. If we decide, hey, we're burnt out, we want to go take a vacation, we can go do it. If, I really want to pursue a new endeavor and I've got the people to do it, then I can go put that time in and pursue it. So to me, that's the success. Building a business that creates passive income basically so that I can continue to explore and do more things. And I also take kind of joy in training and teaching and, being a leader, if you will. So I feel like just being able to pass that on to other people is, makes you feel good, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you're really trying to grow people to replace yourself.
Exactly.
So you can free your time up, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say time because how old are you? You're in your 30s?
34.
Okay, 34. So I just turned 50. And I think to me, the most precious thing probably for me now is time. And it's probably, I've always navigated it, but it's more important to me now. Like having the time is more important than can I make an extra $5,000 doing A, B, or C?
Yeah.
Because it's like the work will never ever go away, right? So managing that process and trying to tame that beast of not letting the business run me, but finding ways to run the business more effectively.
Yep.
That's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
But for you seeing that at 34 years old is actually, it's really commendable and I think when your kids are young too, the time is really important. And then they start getting activities and you're just running everywhere and you don't even know which way is up or down. And you're just trying to get food in them at night and get homework done. And you go through those years of all of that hecticness. And then the house goes quiet and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. What are we going to do now? Right.
Yeah.
But they all have an element of time. And I think it's interesting because, I mean, as you know, owning your own business is a very difficult endeavor in and of itself, but very rewarding. It can be very rewarding. And one of the things that I've always placed a huge value on is family. And I try to do the same thing with my people, is to encourage that family environment and making their families a priority and not missing your kids' activities and those types of things. And that's one of the things that this business afforded me which was I didn't miss my kids' events. I didn't miss my kids' games. So I was always balancing that time aspect all through the years. But now it's my priority.
Yeah.
Even now that my kids are grown and out of the house, it is my priority.
And I think that is kind of reflective of the building industry too. That we see a lot of people really putting family first and the relationships amongst their team and subcontractors and everything else, because you do spend a lot of time with them and rely on them and everything else. I guess it's just not as cutthroat or demanding as like a corporate lifestyle would be.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was in that corporate world. My wife is still in that corporate world. It is very demanding. It is very cutthroat. And to have the ability to treat people the right way and create a culture where people want to come to work every day and they feel valued and those things. I feel like at the end of the day, that comes through to a client, that comes through to the end user, and it creates trust and loyalty. If you know that you're putting good people in their house and they're treating people the right way, I think that's felt, that's seen. So I don't think you can fake it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way, that when a client says something about one of your guys, in the field, it feels great.
Yes.
They compliment them and it's just like, yes, like.
Honestly, for me, it's one of my biggest hurdles to just hiring in general, because I don't want to upset that culture. There's got to be a fit.
Right.
Because people have to understand that is what that relationship with us internally, and then that relationship with the client is everything. It just is, because if we do a good job, I'll never have to market to that client again. They'll just tell 10 people and they'll call us back for the next project 3 or 4 years later and all of those things. So it's free marketing if you do it the right way.
Do you think that kind of is affecting that labor shortage within the industry, because maybe we are a little more choosy on the culture and the type of people that we hire?
I think it depends on the trade, and it depends. Like, I have to be that way because we're working in somebody's house all the time. you probably have to be that. You probably have certain criteria when you're like when you come into an existing home and you put on the booties and you do those things, right? You're immediately showing your awareness to that different setting. And so I think it's just interesting in general. I think if somebody was a framer and they could teach somebody to frame and they weren't going to have clients around all day, they would take anybody to teach them to frame if they're willing to work, right?
Yeah.
And for us, I think there's 2 or 3 other things that they have to have in addition to being able to learn and being able to do the work. Yeah. So it's an interesting dynamic for sure. Mm-hmm. And it's one that we, quite honestly, that we sell off of, right? It's like, I know I can put people in your house. I can go to bed at night and I can not worry about what my people are doing in your house. If you go to work each day, you go to work and you don't have to stay home and babysit us. And if your 12-year-old daughter gets off the bus at 3:00, you can be comfortable knowing that you're not going to have to worry about, because I'm not putting anybody in your house that I wouldn't put in my house with my daughters or my wife or nobody else home.
Right.
It's a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
So I appreciate very, very much you taking the time to come in and talk about these things. It's always interesting to talk to somebody about in an area of knowledge where I have a little bit, as you can tell, not near enough. I'm like a typical homeowner. Mm-hmm. I had you out to my house. I'm like, my TV is not making any sound. My guys would tell you they don't want me working or touching anything related to anything on a project. I know how to price it. Mm-hmm. I know how to interact with people. I know how to make sure that good people do a good job, and all of those elements of how it goes together. But I can't build anything, and it's entertaining when I do. So it was funny. The first thing you come out and you say is, "Okay, has the TV got sound?" I'm like, no, my speakers are humming. I hear the speakers humming, but there's no sound coming out. You're like, do you have the other remote? Grab the other remote. You turn it up. I'm like, son of a bitch, you've got to be kidding me. There is sound coming out of this TV. I just went 3 weeks without watching this TV because it was making no sound because I didn't grab the original remote and turn it up.
And just try that.
Just try that. But that's where the technology piece, I mean, you sourced it and you figured out, yep, there is a bad box. Mm-hmm. It is not working. So what is that box? Some kind of audio transmitter?
Yeah, an analog digital converter.
Analog digital converter. It's always a digital converter in it. So funny. But yeah, you saved me. You bailed me out. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Well, thanks again. Best of luck to you with all of your future endeavors. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate the help that you've given me with clients and at my house.
Thank you very much. I had a great time and appreciate being on here.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye, everybody.
Do you have a home remodeling question? Or would you like to know what the best remodeling plan would be to fit your lifestyle? Submit your questions now at lifestylegroup.com, and we may answer them on a future episode. Stay tuned to see what advice the Lifestyle Group has for you on the next episode of the Do You P.L.A.N podcast.